Hi, I'm Greta Oliver. Welcome to the Educate You podcast, your roadmap to learning tips, techniques, and strategies to enable your student to successfully navigate the road to and through higher education. Hello there. Thank you so much for joining us today on Educate You. I'm Dr. Greta Oliver, your host, and today on our podcast, we'll be learning all about learning styles, and we'll be able to translate that information to your students so that they will be able to do a better job academically in college once they determine what their learning styles are. We have a guest speaker today, Marilyn Slaughter, who will be giving us information about learning styles and ways in which they can be used to help your student be more successful academically. Stay tuned, we're in for a treat. So thank you once again so much for joining us, Marilyn. Today we'll be talking about learning styles and why that's so important for students to be able to know what their own learning styles are and be able to use that information as they go through the process of being in college. And so today we want to welcome Marilyn Slaughter, who is currently employed as an SAT test administrator in Durham. And her past experience has included working with students, teaching freshman seminars for over 37 years. And her interaction with students for over 37 years as an educator lets us know that she is well versed in what students need. Please join me in welcoming to the podcast, Marilyn Slaughter. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
I think we'll just jump right in. But one thing that I did want to kind of bring up as we talk is that we have real similar backgrounds. My undergrad was in business education, taught a lot of freshman seminars, been involved for years and years, what seems like years and years and years, on higher education campuses as well as high school and things of that nature. And so we have quite a bit of knowledge between the two of us to be able to, spread that knowledge and help some students. And I think we both have a heart for students and a passion for student success. And so I'm just so happy to have you here today. And I just can't wait to see what you have to tell us. And, I'm always learning. I'm a lifelong learner, and so I just want to welcome you, and I thank you for your contribution to us today.
Appreciate the invitation.
Oh, no problem. You're one of the first persons that I thought of. Let's just jump right in and kind of talk about, what learning styles are. What are learning styles, and why is it important for students to know what their learning style is?
Well, learning styles students understand how they learn in the process, how they process information. Mm-hmm. So it's very important for them to know their learning style so they can know how to process the information so they can learn how to retain the information.
Okay. Do you have any strategies or tips or even examples of ways in which maybe a person that has a certain kind of learning style can utilize that information to inform how they study, like an actual example of how that works?
Yes. So I was going to talk about the different types of learning style using the VOC questionnaire.
Okay.
So let me start there, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So with the learning styles, they are simply the best way someone learns, and they discover how they process the information. So with VOC, it stands for visual, oral, reading, writing, and kinesthetic.
Okay.
So with a visual learner, they like to see things. That's how they process the information. They process it by seeing the information. They want it explained to them, and they learn to use charts and graphs when they are processing their information. And they like PowerPoints. And they also like to outline their information, that their work, so that they will be able to go through those steps.
That's a good example. And so you're saying that if somebody is a visual learner, they like to see things. They really want to have the information in front of them somehow. And so let's just work with that. Let's just talk about a visual learning for now. if somebody
Okay.
is a visual learner, if they're studying, what kind of things do you suggest that they would do when studying?
So when they're studying, they should go to make some charts,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
write down some charts and make some graphs. And they also may do flashcards.
Okay, that's
Just,
perfect. That is a
yes.
perfect example because so much is so different when you get on the college campus that when you are a student and you have a certain learning style, let's say we're talking about visual, and you go into a classroom and maybe the professor isn't teaching visually. Maybe they are a teacher that just does lectures, right? And
Hmm.
so that particular student would need to do something different than what somebody that was, used to having like a hearing or auditory learning style would do when they study, right? And
Right.
so they would be the ones, if they were visual, they would be the ones that would go and take the information that they heard in the lecture and then somehow, make flashcards or make charts or make diagrams and things so that they can retain that information. So that is perfect. And
Right.
so,
And they also like to use highlighters. So they will
okay,
highlight the main points so they
okay,
can glance down at their highlighted information and remember it.
okay, that's great. So can you tell us about some of the other learning styles? We talked about um, the visual learners. I have to keep it
Mhm.
straight in my own mind. The visual learners, and we talked about the auditory learners, right? So we talked about
um,
seeing and hearing. What
yes.
are some of the other learning styles that you talked about that you listed?
Reading and writing.
Okay.
So these students, they actually like to read the dictionary,
Oh,
study
we.
words. They like taking notes, and
Mm-hmm.
they're good at tests, so they don't mind a test. They're not afraid of a test.
Okay.
And these students, they like handouts
Okay.
so that they can go back and refer to the handout that
Okay.
they
So
received.
that's great. So they pretty much would be at home in maybe a lecture class, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Okay.
they don't mind going to the library.
Okay, cool. That's
They don't
great.
mind
Now,
being by their self study.
I do look up a lot of words when I am reading anything for the first time. It could be nonfiction, fiction, whatever it is. If I'm reading something for the first time, I do know that I make a habit. If I don't know what the word is, if I'm not
Mhm.
familiar with the word, I will stop in the middle of what I'm reading. And sometimes you can even figure out what the word means from the context of the story that you're reading. But
Right.
I still like to always go and look that word up. So I don't know what you want to classify me. Maybe a nerd. I don't. I don't know. But I do. I really can't even. I don't want to go further in that book until I really get an understanding of what that word is. And so I got to figure out what that means. But I just found that was kind of interesting because I know a lot of people don't do that. And
Right.
a lot of people don't even really read. So,
Hmm.
so we, that's great. So that's some good information. What's the other, do you know can you tell us about the other learning style we talked about so far? Hearing, seeing, reading, and writing, correct? So
Right.
there's one more.
Kinesthetic.
Okay.
And these students learn by doing. They're like a hands-on person.
Okay.
They like you to show them, and then they will do it. They like going to the lab.
Okay. Labs.
So these
That's great.
people, they may want to be in the field of medical field because
Okay.
they have a lot of internships, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so they like to be right in there doing the work, learning
Right.
that way,
Okay,
hands-on.
good. That's really good information. And so, if we just think about all of these different learning styles and think about a student in college, maybe coming for the first time, maybe they haven't even really ever thought about how they learn. They just have been in school and now they're in college and they're expected to actually retain some of this information and be able to, come out of this thing with a degree and graduation
Hmm.
and everything. And so it really is important that students get to know and understand what their learning style is so that they can know. It could help them when they're scheduling their classes. Maybe
Hmm.
they can find out some information about their professors and how they teach, and what their primary mode of teaching is. Are they a professor that just lectures only, or are there a professor who has like group work or interaction or some kind of, something that they need to be able to help them process the information a little bit better? And then even if they don't have that, they can't find that within their professor, they have to make up the difference on their own when they're studying. And so that's why this is so important. Right. And how do you think learning styles, knowing what your learning style, how do you think that equates to student success?
It's very important for students to know their learning style. They may have more than one type of learning style, but they will have a dominant learning style.
Okay.
And once they find out their dominant learning style, they can use that to process information and know how to study. Now, if they don't, the teacher is teaching in a different learning style, they could go to that professor's office and sit down with them and ask them if they have handouts, if they have something they could give them that's referred to their different learning style that can help them in their studies.
That's a great idea. That is wonderful. And so we know students need to know what their learning styles are, know what their dominant one is if they have more than one, which they probably do, and then seek help if they're still having difficulty figuring out how to learn the information that's being presented. And so that's going to hopefully translate into better grades, a better GPA, a better standing, being able to progress through their coursework at college. So this is a win-win for everybody, as long as they, get on board and realize, if they have any gaps or what they need to do, or how they can figure out how to get that information and then retain it and be able to return it on the test so that they can have good grades. And so that's wonderful information. Thank you so much for giving us tips on learning strategies and why they're so important. So
another suggestion I would have for a student is, if they need tutoring, don't be ashamed to go get tutoring. Absolutely. Most colleges and universities have tutorials sessions for them so they could get help.
Okay, that's a wonderful thing too. We might as well just talk a little bit about that, because students, you have to, one thing we do talk about a lot and think about is the fact that there's a lot of help available for students, but they do have to go get this help.
Right.
It's not going to be a lot of, kind of hand-holding kind of thing going on the college level. So if, like you said, if you need tutoring, find out where that tutoring is. I know for some of the harder courses and a lot of the science courses and math courses, they definitely have tutoring. And they have tutoring for a lot of different courses. So get in touch with where that academic tutoring is, either online or in person. However you can get it if you're a student and you're struggling and you can't seem to retain the information. And also if you have accommodations, which some students do have, and they have had accommodations their whole entire educational career, probably from grade school on up through high school. And so there's no reason for them to think that they won't need it on the college level. So you need to go to, the accommodations office, disability services, whatever it's called on the campus, and get the help. You have to self-identify for that. And so that's another tip as well.
Yes, that's very important.
Better academically. Thank you so much, Marilyn. I appreciate your help, your contribution, and your support. I look forward to talking to you later. You may even be back on here as another guest, because you're so knowledgeable about so many things. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us today on Educate You. If you wish, you can send me your questions or comments about the college going process or the podcast contents by sending an email to Dr. Greta at gretaoliverconsulting.com. Also, beginning each week after the podcast airs, check for a companion blog on my website's blog page at gretaoliverconsulting.com. My book, College Roadmap, Essential Tips for First-Time College Students and Their Families, is available for sale on Amazon.com. Join us next week for another tip or strategy to make the road to higher education easier for your student.